Greetings and welcome everyone to this IMCCA special webcast around the coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19. I had a number of my analyst friends on a call with me about between 30 and 45 days ago, depending upon which one you're looking at. We did quite a few of them. And I thought it would be a good idea now that we have let about a month and a half pass of all being stuck at home with our hair growing as big as it used to be in the 70s. And except, of course, for David, whose hair's been growing that big for weeks, years. Um, have my analyst friends back on the call and see what we got right, what we got wrong, and what the news things are. So let me ask everyone to introduce themselves. Blair, since I'm looking at you, let me start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Okay, thanks for having me. I'm Blair Pleasant, President and Principal Analyst of ComFusion. I'm an independent analyst. I'm also co-founder of BC Strategies, which used to be UC Strategies. I follow the collaboration, contact center, unified communications market. I've been doing this forever, and yeah, it's always fun.
Great, thanks for being here, David Maldow. Why don't you? You were the pioneer in all of this long hair stuff, right?
Well, I just always thought that haircuts are not an essential activity. So that hasn't changed.
Introduce yourself,
And
please.
thanks. I'm the founder of Let's Do Video. I've been covering business video, business collaboration for a long time, extending into team productivity, remote teams, and now working from home.
Thank you, David. Roopam, can you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm a senior analyst at Frost & Sullivan's Connected Work practice. I have covered conferencing and collaboration technologies for over 20 years now, and my particular areas of coverage include video and team collaboration. And David Danto, Maldow, I disagree with you. I totally need a haircut. It's the longest that my hair has ever been, and I think I can use a massage. Last few weeks have not been easy.
I'm with you on the massage.
Okay, if only we could do that virtually. I'm probably if anybody's working on that, Eric Yuan's probably working on that virtual massage thing. And last but not least, we have Tim Banting with us in the UK. Tim, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, David. And as you clearly see, I'm not an expert in haircuts, and it's been difficult for me as well. I've been trying to butcher it myself with a pair of hair clippers and not doing very good either. It's a challenge. Anyway, yeah, my name's Tim Banting. I work as a senior principal analyst at Omdia, and my primary focus is on unified communications and collaboration.
Okay, all of you, thanks very much for joining me today. So let's start with what's surprised us. I mean, we when we first were talking about this, we talked about how we were going to be missing some trade shows, and they were going to be postponed maybe till the summer. Now it's kind of looking like the summer is gone and trade shows are gone, at least until there's a vaccine or some active treatment. We were talking about how a lot of the people in our industry were stepping up. What's the biggest thing in your mind right now? What stands out the most, guys?
Well, I
Well,
have to say how much the industry is stepping up. Um, I'm just so impressed with all the vendors, the resellers, system integrators. I might have mentioned this last time, but I've got an article that has an ongoing list of vendors that have offered free or reduced prices for several. And it started 30 days in China, and now it's just it's amazing the offers that companies have to really help out to set up cloud services, to set up work from home, remote contact center agents, remote workers, setting up collaboration. It's just so impressive. So I think my list right now is 37 UC vendors and 32 contact center vendors. And I got two more today that I need to add to the list. There's quick reference guides, work from home reference guides. I think it's just really impressive the way the industry has stepped up during all of this. And also how quickly they've been able to get people up and running, working remotely. Um, I'm just really impressed with our industry, I have to say.
I agree with you, Blair. And what has also surprised me is the way cloud video meeting providers have scaled exponentially, 10, 20, 30x. Zoom daily active users growing from 10 to 300 million. Microsoft, I think, has reported 1,000% increase in their video meeting usage and 2.7 billion meeting minutes in a single day. I don't think any of us saw this coming. That the speed of scaling up communication services has been truly impressive, and the services have held up. For most parts, they've held up really well in terms of quality of service, reliability, user experience, even as the usage shot through the roof. So this, I think, speaks to hyperscale computing, the ability of cloud service providers to be agile and scale up. Maybe, if this continues growing at this exponential pace, maybe there'll be some throttling of features, some temporary adjustments. We have already seen that happen for some non-essential capabilities, but I think there may be some adjustments down the road if usage continues growing. But all in all, I'm with Blair. It's been really phenomenal to watch the industry rise up to the challenge.
Yeah, I am impressed with our industry, and it's not just the things that they're doing, it's the attitude. I talk to the vendors privately, and no one's like, we're cashing in on this, look at our numbers. They're really all like, oh my God, we're here to help. How do we help? Can we give away free stuff? How do we do this? Can we help train our new users? It is good for our industry, but everyone really is stepping up to help. But what surprised me is, and I don't think, I don't know if you guys will agree, but my thinking has dramatically changed even recently from, this is a temporary thing, to, well, after this is over, it's not going to go back to the way it was, but it's mostly going to go back to the way it was, to things are really changing. It was a month ago or so, we're at ISE, and I go to shake your hand, and I'm like, it's you, I'll give you a hug, come on, this isn't, and now, David, I've seen you at 100 trade shows, and after this I'm going to see you at 100 more trade shows. I may never shake your hand again. We're going to change, and I think that we're not going to shut down all the offices. We're not going to raise all the buildings. Everyone's not going to be work at home forever, but a lot of 5-day-a-week office people are going to be 3-day-a-week office people, and a lot of 3-day-a-week office people are going to be 1-day-a-week office people. So the bump we're seeing, it may not stay at this level, but it's not going to go back to where it was. We are going to be video workers. We are going to be a remote work society. Not completely, but way more than we ever thought we would be.
Totally agree. Tim?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, a lot of the reservations about moving to the cloud have suddenly disappeared. It's amazing when you're fighting for survival as a business that your concerns about having everything based on the premise goes away because you can't scale quickly, you just can't ramp up, you can't get anyone to help you in terms of the hardware. So I think that's been an interesting point. I think the conversation is moving away from digital transformation and more into how do I respond, restart, and rebuild my business, or how do I actually survive, to be brutally honest. So I think it's been a real reset and a reboot for a number of businesses as they're fighting for survival. And I think the focus is really on business operations at the moment and potentially away from business transformation, which I've always felt has had its large part in terms of servicing your customers and customer experience. I think this at the moment is how do we keep the lifeblood of our company going, and how do we just survive and rebuild moving forward.
Yeah, no, I would agree with all four of you that this is a time when our industry had the opportunity to shine, and for the most part it did. We don't know what the future is going to look like. We don't know how long we're going to be doing the social distancing before there's a cure. We don't know how many industries will survive. And what that's going to mean. It's wonderful that all the UC vendors are giving everything away, but obviously that's not going to last forever. If people aren't there to buy the products, companies are not going to be there. I love the stories that came out of what we were doing with how many telemedicine, telehealth, education, religious activities, community activities, training. My wife, I did a video recently, and some of you guys have probably seen it. My wife is a therapist for kids, learning disabled and learning delayed kids here in New Jersey, and she's moved her whole therapy to help people over video. So there was all these terrific stories about how it's working, and then our industry kind of took a pause and a curve, which seems to have calmed down right now. But with the enormous impact that Zoom had on the industry and how amazing the terms gone into our lexicon around it, what we're talking about, people making fun of it and everything else. There seemed to be this either incidental or concerted FUD campaign around Zoom is not secure. I even heard a news report on the radio today here in in the New York City area that there's a school system not using it and the FBI is investigating it, and there may be some better features in the future, which was clearly a dated story because they've come out with their new platform already. I was a little bit upset that rather than having most of our vendors talk about the good that they're doing, a lot of them did this pile-on Zoom thing as they moved, to 300 million daily users. I mean, David, what's your take on that? Do you think that this was, fair, that it was, inappropriately oversized? I mean, I know that security is important, but most of the security issues were people just leaving the door open. What do you think, David?
This is a really complicated issue, and there's a lot of layers to it. And to be perfectly clear, a lot of Zoom's a few of Zoom's competitors are my sponsors and would love for me to pile on. But Zoom is one of my sponsors, and they'd love for me to take, shield and sword and defend them. So I really have to be kind of balanced here. And the real problem, the biggest problem, I think, is that several issues came to light at once. And we can go down them one by one, and there's three categories of issues. There are mistakes. Zoom made a mistake, not a hindsight mistake. Not a malicious mistake, not haha, we're going to take care of our users. We're trying to make things easier for our users mistake. There's the hindsight mistakes. It was a mistake, but I wouldn't have caught it. And there's the absolute FUD. There's the stuff that, come on. But the thing is, if you start, okay, let's talk about the issue with A, and you start going through it and it makes sense, and someone goes, but what about B? But what about C? But there's three things going on at once. That shows they have a culture problem. And it just becomes really, really hard to, it becomes really hard. I would love to sit through, because I've been studying this. I've been getting DMs from everyone about this. I know everything. And I would love to say, okay, let's go through issue 1. Here's what it really was. Let's go through issue 2. Here's what it really was. And it really is all defendable. And I think Zoom has taken the right position of saying, we're not going to defend anything, because you get in that argument of what about this, what about this? And what they're doing is complete lockdown and just fixing everything and saying we're sorry, and not even, I mean, there's just no defense. And even though it's even for the things that are defendable, I'm in several Zoom chats with friends at Zoom and people I work with at Zoom. Right now, unless I have something to talk to them about security, they don't have time for me. They're in complete and utter security lockdown. And I think that's what needs to be focused on now for them is, are the problems fixed, and can we move forward, and can we reassure our customers that we're secure? Instead of, this is why we did this, we're not bad guys, which, and as someone who's a friend, it is frustrating.
But David, the question,
unfair ones.
The question that we all need to address, and I know that Tim and everybody wants to talk about this, the question we need to address is, were they any more vulnerable than any of the other services out there? Because, there was Apple vulnerabilities announced in the last 2 weeks. There were Microsoft vulnerabilities announced in the last 2 weeks. It just didn't get the kind of attention that Zoom got. And as you point out, some of it, is deserved, but again, I think the magnifying glass probably didn't do our industry any good.
Yeah, without getting into too much details, I've been getting messages saying, hey, Zoom vulnerability X that people are talking about, competitor A also does that same thing. Yeah, so I hear that some of the things that they're getting trashed for are things that others are doing and just not getting. And I think part of it is Zoom's been doing well for a long time. Even before this, they were leading. They were having Zoomtopia events with Weezer playing a rock show there, and everyone's happy, and Zoom is happy. And I think some of their competitors are like, finally, finally they stumbled, finally they tripped, haha, we got them. And they might have gotten a little overzealous in their let's get them now. And to be fair, some of my sponsors, some of the other companies have come to me and said, David, we don't want to be a part of this, but people are asking about security. Can we do a video saying, this is what we do on security if you want to know, just talking about us, not, and I think that's the right approach. If I was a Zoom competitor, I'd say, oh, you care about security. We have great security, without getting in on the haha.
Yeah, we've had some good actors and some bad actors. Tim, you wanted to comment? Everybody wants to comment. Tim, you want to go next?
Yeah, it is a very hot topic, of course. And as P.T. Barnum said, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So I think what Zoom competitors have done have drawn attention to the platform and endorsed Zoom's arrival. And of course, this sort of competing only has the shelf life of cream because it only holds true until the next release. And yesterday we saw the general availability of Zoom 5, and that adds AES 256-bit encryption and a means of reporting bad actors and other security enhancements. And for me, what it's highlighted is this is what it's like at working at cloud speed. You can innovate very quickly. All of Zoom's engineering resources were turned in to fix any problems. They addressed it, or they're addressing it very quickly. And as I say, this sort of FUD has only got the shelf life of cream. It's only as good as the next release. So, there's a saying in the UK, probably holds the same in the US, those that live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And I think what it's done is opened up the whole conferencing security issue, as David says, to a broader group of vendors.
I would have loved to have seen the news media talking about all of these great things our collaboration platforms have done for, the world now stuck at home, as opposed to having to deal with these security comments. I think we lost an opportunity as an industry. But again, I think it's calming down a little bit now. Roopam, your comments?
Yeah, I agree with what David and Tim just covered. It is a hot topic, but it's also a very timely topic. So, it has brought to the forefront some really legitimate concerns and issues that the industry has to address. And it's not necessarily specific to Zoom. It's an across the board security, privacy, and compliance issue, which is going to be top of mind. With thousands and millions of workers being at home in uncontrolled environments, this is new territory. We got to discuss this issue. And going back to the Zoom approach, there's a thin line between usability and security. Zoom's success story was built on the foundation of making video meetings drop dead simple. That's the big challenge, and Zoom was extremely successful. They solved a problem that existed for decades, which was ease of use, lightweight software. In the process, I think user education took a backseat, and that's what Zoom is focusing on. It's not just about making the platform more secure, but also educating the users, making the IT admins aware. It's just a few steps to make your meetings secure. Use personal meeting IDs when you're hosting public events, or password protection, or things like the room lock-in. It's the waiting room feature. Setting up your own two-factor authentication and so on, or blocking screen sharing, app sharing. So there are a lot of things that can be done by the users, by the IT admins. And I think Zoom is just doing a tremendous job right now of educating the users and the IT admins to make the app more secure. And to Tim's point, the issue of full transparency, that's very critical, whether it's end-to-end encryption or any other policy. Nothing should be lost in interpretation. What you offer is what the users and customers need to know.
Yeah, I'll agree with Roopam. Zoom is obviously the cool kid in school. You don't see video parodies on the internet or skits on SNL about, Microsoft Teams or Cisco WebEx. I've seen Cisco WebEx on CNN and some other places, but it's really Zoom that's getting all the attention. And more.
That was actually an interesting point, Blair, and I want to let you continue. But in watching Saturday Night Live, or whatever version of it was last week, it was interesting to see Zoom as part of the show, but Microsoft Teams advertising on it. One is getting the promotion generically, and the other one had to pay for it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, there's so many parodies. Whether it's, Takeoff on Bohemian Rhapsody or, whatever, there's just so many Zoom parodies out there. And yeah, you just don't see that about, other video conferencing things. So, definitely Zoom is getting all the attention. And, we all, I'm using it for virtual yoga classes, virtual happy hours. I think Zoom has become the Kleenex of video conferencing. People aren't saying video, they're saying Zoom, which I'm sure its competitors are not very happy about. And those of us who remember Monty Python know the expression, no one expected the Spanish Inquisition. Well, no one expected the Zoom explosion. And it's just amazing, having to, we're all on those calls where we have to say, no, go into gallery view or, click on this and, having to explain everything to everybody. So it's really fun to watch. But I think the real issue that maybe we should be talking about, obviously security is key, but I think as analysts, some of us also are wondering, how is Zoom going to convert this fame and, well, not fortune, but, convert it to fortune? How is it going to convert these, millions of new free users to paid users? My exercise class is 40 minutes. Why is it 40 minutes? That's the limit for the free service. So, obviously things like, exercise classes, once gyms are open, we're not going to be doing virtual classes, but a lot of things are going to remain virtual and doing these things for over video. So I think the real issue is how is Zoom going to convert some of these free users to paid users? And they're not giving information on what percent or what number of its users are actually paid users. I spoke to them yesterday and they're just not giving away that information. So I think that's something that's going to be really interesting is when people do go back, maybe not to offices because a lot of us will still be working from home, but, back to churches and back to, therapy offices and things. What's going to happen then?
Good point. David, you wanted the last word? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple really quick things. Well, one is I'm concerned that I'm coming off as saying we don't care about security. I do think security is super important, but I think it's for us analysts to worry about. It wasn't for the media to be exploding and misrepresenting. But what I really want to say is I want to amplify something Roopam said is really important, and I don't want it to get missed, is the whole thing with security is that it's a trade-off with usability. If you're using a platform that doesn't have security, doesn't have passwords and this and that, it's not because they don't care. It's because they're saying we're going to have less clicks for our users and make it easier for our users by having less security features. And those were the kind of mistakes that were made. And now we're seeing the flip side, because every Zoom meeting that I've been in for the last 2 weeks, they've made the waiting room, which is one of the best security features for getting rid of the human component, people crashing your meeting, they made it default. So every meeting I've joined, people say, now I got to do an extra click to let you in with this waiting room thing. I'm like, that's the security usability trade-off. And what I say is, hey, we have 3 things we have to do under this whole Corona thing. We have to social distance, we have to wash our hands, and we have to enable our waiting rooms. It's just part of it now. So that is so something to keep in mind. If you're asking for more security, you might be getting some extra clicks, but that's what we need now.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see, and as all of you pointed out, the idea of how many of these free users will be converted to paid users. The only advantage I see to being the most popular kid on the block is, iPhones weren't initially intended for enterprise, but when enough people had them and were using them and it was part of their life, they forced it in. So you'll probably see a lot more people going to cloud in one way or another, and hopefully all boats rising with the tide. But speaking of some of the other boats, Zoom's not the only player in the space right now. In fact, predating Zoom is the platform we're using today, Blue Jeans. We just read some news that Blue Jeans is going to be bought out by Verizon and going to be part of Verizon's new media service. And the founders of Blue Jeans have come out and said that this is just the first of many waves of consolidation that they feel are going to happen. Anybody have any opinions on whether or not this was a good move and whether or not we're just starting to see the beginning of consolidation around the UCaaS space?
Yeah, okay, David, I think for Verizon, it's a really good move. Verizon want OneTalk to become their own branded platform rather than a specific vendor's product. And an enterprise-grade video solution is key as part of that strategy. The Blue Jeans network, Microsoft Teams gateways allow connectivity for most existing legacy conferencing solutions to integrate with Microsoft Teams. And then also you've got the Blue Jeans events with Facebook live stream. It's an interesting capability to add to Verizon's portfolio, particularly given the current situation that we find ourselves in. In terms of consolidation, I really do think that we are going to see an awful lot of consolidation. There's far too many market adjacencies there that are overlapping. I mean, we've got team collaboration that has elements of UC and telephony and conferencing and task management and workflow automation and enterprise file sync and share. There are IT departments that are stretched in terms of budgets. Are we going to see more of a suite approach to vendors? I probably think so. I think Verizon is an indication of a service provider that's thinking like that.
Anyone else thinking about it? Consolidation? Go ahead.
I think it's also the issue of owning your own roadmap and owning control of the technology, because you don't want technology that you're using or partnering with to go to a competitor, because we've seen that happen, and then you have to scramble. Okay, what am I going to do now? So I think it really does make sense to own the technology so that you can, again, control the roadmap and be in control of your future, because otherwise it can be pretty scary. So I do expect a lot more acquisitions along this area. But the other thing is we're also seeing very low barriers to entry, especially with WebRTC. Anyone can, start doing video and making it easier. So I think we're going to see consolidation, but also a lot of new entries. I get it's amazing how many new vendors are out there and contacting me from Finland and Russia and all over the place. And it's like, oh, I've got this WebRTC video. Okay, great. Who doesn't? So I think it's going to be both consolidation and expansion.
Yeah, and I agree. Going back to the synergies, it's also great for Blue Jeans. They were a disruptor in the industry. They helped the industry move away from those monolithic hardware-based bridges to more agile cloud solutions. They have a good platform. They were limited though in their ability to scale in go-to-market. So that's where the Verizon coming in is, I think it's going to be good for the industry. Verizon scale will be able to take it beyond enterprise customers and extend the reach of Blue Jeans. And then the other aspect is the promise of 5G, which Verizon has spoken to quite a bit after the acquisition. And it's a little early in the day to talk about the opportunity for video conferencing with 5G, but I think it has tremendous potential with super fast speed and lower latency. We may see new video use cases come up, B2B, B2C, whether it's in education, banking, healthcare, which will be enabled by 5G, and it's a big gap in the industry that has not been tapped into yet.
Well, we were talking when the big debate came out about net neutrality, that we went back and forth with here in the US FCC and a few other people that are kind of looking and regulating around it. Certainly, in Congress are talking about it as well. There was always this fear of throttling. So if Verizon, who is a big network services provider, either in their landline service with Fios, which I use, or in their 4G, 5G, LTE current network, if they own Blue Jeans, what is the incentive for them not to throttle Zoom or WebEx or one of the competitors if they're owning one of the services? I don't think there's a regulation that prevents it. That would say
they
yes.
Said they would never do that. They said
well,
they said if we don't regulate them, they'll never do that. They're nice.
Well, who would you want to use? Would you want to be selling your own paint or paint that you had to bring in from a third party?
We have seen carriers and telcos go in that direction in the past. I mean, I don't foresee this as a carrier throttling issue. I think Verizon will miss a big opportunity if they only lead with Blue Jeans. I mean, there is a clear need for solutions like Microsoft Teams and WebEx and Zoom, and Verizon so far has made it amply clear that they will continue working with other providers. But having said that, you have a point. I mean, the devil is in the details. It remains to be seen how much of that comes to fruition. But I don't think Verizon can lead with Blue Jeans only. They will miss a big opportunity in the market.
Okay.
I have mixed feelings about the whole thing. Because on the one hand, I'm a big fan of Blue Jeans. I mean, from the very beginning, and Roopam's right. They really changed the industry. It was, I remember I was at Wayne House Research trying to get a Polycom system to talk to a Cisco system and be nice. It was so bad back in the days. And I get a call from Andrew Davis saying, I need you to test something. I don't believe this. Get on the phone with me. We're going to get this. We had to get on the phone to figure out how to do video back then. And all of a sudden, I was connecting a Polycom, a Cisco, or whatever else to a Skype call. I'm like, is this for real? What am I looking at here? And I've worked with the team since then, and they're good people there, and they really built the service. It is one of the better services out there. It is, using Zoom at the bar, matching feature per feature. Blue Jeans is good. People like Blue Jeans. It's good. And it's a good company, and it has a good reputation, and da-da-da. Verizon, that's not everyone's favorite people. It's not everyone's favorite company. Is Blue Jeans still going to be, is making a Blue Jeans call still going to be this happy experience, or are we going to be in Verizon land now? And maybe that's not, very good business analytics. It's just a feeling kind of thing. But I like the feeling that making a Blue Jeans call gives me, and I hope it maintains. I hope Verizon lets Blue Jeans continue to be Blue Jeans.
I think what it is highlighting is, to go back to the platform point, I think it is highlighting a new wave in communication service providers that want to own their own platform and, as Blair said, own their own direction, their own roadmap, their own brand. We've seen that with CenturyLink, we've seen that with companies like Nextiva and others. I think what we're seeing is service providers realizing it's the only way that they can differentiate. They used to have a vanilla flavor of, say, Cisco, or a vanilla flavor of someone else. They used to sell exactly the same sort of service, try and differentiate on their network, and everything used to go back to how wonderful we are in the network. And they were, by and large, undifferentiated. So I think what we're seeing here is a new wave in the service provider space, with people looking at owning their own platform, owning their own roadmap, creating their own brands, and differentiating in ways that they see as meaningful for their clients.
Okay, so let me bring up a different topic just for a second, because it's one that's kind of been bothering me as we go through the living at home and working at home and everything at home and not going anywhere. When people are watching this webcast right now, you're looking at me, you're seeing me on your screen, however large your screen is, or however large this portion of the screen is, you're looking at just me. There are 4 other people on the call with me, but it's a better experience for you to be able to see my face and my crooked glasses and all my expressions and my Brooklyn moving hands and all the rest of it. But we've gone into, and I'm switching for a moment for everybody, this is the gallery view of all of us on here. This was always called continuous presence in the video conferencing industry. People call it Hollywood Squares or Brady Bunch or whatever else it is. This is seeped into the cultural norms. There was a need for this. There is a need for this when we're all home during the pandemic, because teachers want to see their entire class, not just who's talking. And when we're doing these virtual happy hours, we want to get the sense of community and gathering and everything else. But this is definitely a worse experience of me talking, because you can't see me as well. Certainly if there are 30 or 40 or 50 people in the call, it makes it very difficult to manage with this. We're now starting to see broadcast productions faking continuous presence. When it's obviously not there, when they've all recorded separate segments at home and putting it together that way, culturally accepted, because everybody, of course, has to be social distancing. And even Saturday Night Live last week did what they did, a pretend Zoom call. They built a Zoom shell, but just did whatever they wanted to do inside it. So is this concept of continuous presence coming back into our cultural norms? People are going to take it as accepted that that's how we communicate with media going forward?
I've had this on continuous presence the whole time, because I have a big enough screen that with 4 people, I'm able to see you at a good size. So when you're speaking, I can see you, and then I can see everyone else's reaction. So we may be recording it in speaker view, but I'm experiencing it in continuous presence, and I like it. This is the way I do things. Unless if there's more than 8 or 9 people, yeah, I can't see. My screen isn't that big, unfortunately. So then I will go to speaker view. But I like being able to look around the room like as if I was in a meeting room with you. Yes, I would be looking at you and seeing you almost like a full speaker view, but I can still see everyone else. And continuous presence gives me that. I think it's I don't think it's one of those things like, oh no, the masses have gotten video conferencing and they're doing it wrong. We have to educate them. I think it's
Well,
okay.
suddenly people that have been, or organizations, providers that have been very reluctant to go in that direction have now suddenly adopted it. Microsoft moved from a 4x4, excuse me, 2x2 with icons to now they're supporting 9x9, and they did it very quickly during the pandemic. Google Meets, now they've changed their name again, is now supporting it. First, it used to be with a plugin, now it's natively. Multiple people. So I've got a feeling that this and things like virtual backgrounds have become very important, even though they're not really very important to what we do and what collaboration does. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah, if I may jump in, continuous presence for any of us who have covered the video conferencing industry for decades is nothing new. I mean, if we've always had that experience, and yeah, it's now coming into apps, web apps. And as David said, the flexibility should be left up to the user. If I want to see you in continuous presence or active speaker mode, it depends on the use case also. And the move from both Microsoft and Google is also prompted by the tremendous uptake for remote learning. When you are in an education session, the educator, the teacher may want to see a continuous presence if it's a class of 14, 16 students, just to be able to make sure everyone's paying attention, everyone is engaged, and so on. So I think it depends on the use case, and then leave it up to the user. Give that flexibility to the user. Zoom has always had continuous presence, and it's up to you how you want to use it.
Yeah, I think Roopam's right. The more control that you can put to the end users, the more they're going to personalize it, feel that it's theirs, interact with it, and use it. There was no choice previously in the video industry. And with regards to virtual backgrounds, I mean, I may be in places that I don't want to have my boss to see, where I'm working from, or might be embarrassed, or for whatever reason. I mean, you can have fun with virtual backgrounds. You can portray a much better business image as well. So I think whatever you can put in the hands of the user will decide how to make it personal, how they want to interact with it. And we just haven't had that. We just haven't had those options in the past.
Yeah,
All right, so
quick
let's.
okay,
Dave.
I'm supposed to say on virtual backgrounds, and I'm sorry I don't have mine set up for today's meeting, but it's bigger than people think. People love it. It's not just that it makes it a little bit more fun. There's actual, and I read this and it didn't occur to me. I wish I'd thought of this, but there's a feel-good story for it. Some students don't want to show their bedrooms because their bedrooms aren't as nice as some of their classmates. Some of their classmates have toys and video games and things behind them, and they just don't. And rather than show their reality, they show whatever they want. They put themselves on a beach or something. So it's a social anxiety thing, and people are having so much fun with it. I have a lot of Zoom-related and industry-related content on my website, on my YouTube channel. I have one video that went completely thriving in the last month, well over 100,000 views, and it was just about Zoom virtual backgrounds because that's what everyone's looking to do. It's a huge, huge thing.
Yeah, and just to add to that very quickly, it's also a security feature. Users that are in the background, their privacy is retained. You can prevent sharing of whiteboards or confidential information, things like a healthcare scenario, so it is a security feature besides being a feel-good feature.
All right, so let's take on one last topic before we end this one today. We still have a little bit of time, but let's kind of go through how we see the future because everybody's been talking about, and we were talking about it 45 days ago as well, the difference between going back to normal or going back to the new normal. We've had some very detailed, specific conversations around what offices will look like and what people will act and whether they'll touch panels or touch elevator buttons or anything. But what are the other changes that we're going to see within our industry? I mean, there was no hotter topic in collaboration than the huddle room. Possibly, a team chat, but huddle room was right up there. And I've heard from 5 people in the last 3 days, end user companies saying the last thing I'm going to do is get into a room that only 3 people can fit in. I want to be in the big room now, and only have 3 people in a room that holds 50 because of spacing. Obviously, we're going to be reprioritizing what organizations are doing. Whether they're working on, devices, systems, platforms for home versus for the office. What other changes? I mean, what do you think are the top 2 or top 3 changes that you guys are seeing that as we even go back to doing this pre having any kind of vaccine or treatment, that the UC industry is going to start morphing into and changing into going forward? I mean, Blair, I'll start with you because one of the things we were talking about before we started recording was this whole concept of the contact center. I mean, there isn't a good reason anymore to put 200 people in a building with a bank of telephones or headsets talking to people if that whole functionality can happen from home, I assume.
Well, there are still good reasons, and not everybody can do that, but I absolutely agree. Remote agents and work from home agents is definitely going to be the big trend. And I think one of the big benefits of that is that you can hire talent wherever they are. You can have, you don't have to hire people just because they can commute into where your contact center is. So you can have, retired people who can work, certain hours, or, moms who can just work certain hours. Parents. But you're not limited just because of, who's around, but you can really get the best qualified people from wherever they're located and working different hours and shifts, which I think is a huge benefit. So I think the work from home is definitely going to continue, and certainly the cloud is the big enabler for that. And companies that have already moved to the cloud are reaping the benefits, and we're quickly seeing others moving in that direction, probably a lot faster than they had planned on. I spoke to some companies that said we were going to do it in the next 2 years, and now it's in the next 2 months. So we're definitely going to see a big uptake in that. But again, you do have issues. You've got bandwidth issues. You've got, people. Some people don't have the right environment. They might have dogs and kids. And someone told me a story about this one woman who is a contact center agent. She lives in a one-bedroom apartment with her husband, who works during the day, and she works at night. And just trying to arrange it so that she can actually take calls and do this. So it's going to be a challenge for a lot of people. But I think for a long time, companies made it a benefit, whereas if you do a good job, will allow you to work from home because people really do appreciate, the work-life balance and a lot of the benefits that it provides. But now it's going to be, definitely the norm for a lot of companies that can do it.
Yeah, I think moving more to sort of technology specific areas around video conferencing, I think what we're seeing is our clients are turning around and saying that the support for broadcast and webinars and live events is way too overcomplicated. And I think what's happening is we'll probably see a merging of meetings and live events coming together, because there seems to be no reason why you have to go to a more expensive platform or a different platform altogether to have Q&A moderation. I mean, I've been in meetings where the chat session's been, flowing and people are getting very animated and discussions are going back and forth. That's impossible to moderate that. So why have all the video meetings got a chat session without Q&A moderation? And why do you have to go to live meetings from Microsoft or go to webinar or go to a different platform to have some of these features and capabilities that could be rolled into one? So for me, I think we're going to see those two technology areas coming together, and I hope to goodness we do.
That's a really interesting point, Tim. We saw web sharing and video conferencing essentially come together on platforms to now be the same thing. So you're thinking that webinars and meetings are essentially going to come together and be the same thing with just a different kind of control and security piece.
Yeah, I think it's about time we should. And also, there's been a number of meetings that I've attended where it might be a town hall and they say, okay, we've only got enough time for 3 questions, and you sort of think, great, so 3 out of 5, 500 people have got more than 3 questions between them all. So how do you then record that, and how do you keep the conversation going, and how do you address those questions that were never asked? So I think that there's going to be a whole refocusing of effort on that sort of area as well from a technology perspective.
And I've attended a number of conferences over the last month, put together by people that are not as UC perfect as we are, where they're trying to figure out how to get them to stream to YouTube or stream to Facebook Live. There was just, as we record this, just 2 days ago, there was a 90th birthday celebration for Stephen Sondheim that was supposed to be taking place streaming over YouTube, and they couldn't get it started. They literally, I have a good friend of mine who does a comedy show that, it took her a month to figure out how to get Zoom meetings to stream to Facebook. So yeah, there's certainly a need there for somebody to come along and make that easier and make it blend. I think it's a really good idea. Anyone else?
A couple of
Go ahead.
Sorry. Just a couple of different points, and I agree with everything that's been said so far regarding just reconfiguring offices. Modern offices are going to be looking very different in the future. From the technology provider perspective, I think capacity planning, hyperscale computing will take a whole new meaning. Supply chains, vendors have to reassess that their supply chains are not too concentrated. They are more fragmented and dispersed so that they don't get impacted with crises like this. And e-commerce enablement. A lot of providers were caught by surprise that do not have a solid e-commerce platform, because these are the times when users often circumvent IT. They may run out to us. Well, stores are closed now, but they ran out to the nearest Best Buy to buy whatever device that could get them up and running. So e-commerce enablement will become a part and parcel of the strategies also.
Yep, totally agree. David?
Yeah, a couple of things. One thing that was a little funny. I think people are going to become, and it doesn't take that much, but video savvy very soon. I was recently on a family gathering. Everyone's home, and they invited the cousins and the uncles and people I don't even know I'm related to. There was too many, and it was a chaos. It was one of those chaos Zoom meetings. The moderator didn't know how to mute people. You hear babies crying in the background and dogs barking, and we loved it. It was wonderful. The chaos was part of the joy.
David, how
And
did you get everybody to figure out that they couldn't all sing at the same time? That was the only thing that I couldn't get anybody to understand. The one guy who
oh,
wouldn't stop talking just talked over everybody.
yeah, well, yeah. At some point, I started whispering the moderator and saying, "This is how you mute people," and we started making some sense of it because there were things people wanted to say. But at first, we just let the chaos reign, and it was all part of it, and it was all fun. But we did get it under control. But afterwards, I got a bunch of emails from cousins and uncles and aunts and stuff saying, "How did you look so great on video? I look like such a schlub. I look 10 years older. You're older than me. Why do I look older than you? What's going on?" And it's the very basics. I'm centered. Look at all five of us, right? We're all centered about the way you should be. Newscaster presenter. I have not $1,000. I got $35 lights, but they're set up correctly. And I had a fun virtual background behind me. That's all it took. And I got a nice mic. I mean, but you don't need all those things, right? Whatever you can do, you do. I didn't get these all day one. I got one, then I got the other. And people are gradually going to build their little home studios, and it's not thousands of dollars of equipment. And people are going to start looking good on video. And the other big prediction to really answer your question is, I think what's going to change is a lot of the things that the five of us have been predicting for the last 10 years are going to happen in the next year instead of the next 10 years like we expected. We were wrong. Well, we weren't wrong, but there's some things we didn't foresee. That huddle rooms becoming, no one ever wants to huddle with anyone anymore. They're going to be social distance rooms. We couldn't have foreseen that, but we've been saying that people who say that remote working is a compromise and your home worker doesn't work as much as your office worker are wrong. People who work at home are more productive. People that are more free. Everything we've been saying. Free your workers. Let them work at home when they can. Still come to the office sometimes. That was all starting to happen slowly. It was becoming more acceptable, the home workers, but we were on a 5-year course for it, and now we're there. We're there.
Well, I've written at least one I told you so blog. I've hinted at I told you so going forward, but yeah, this is exactly what we've been talking about for at least, for me 20 years, but certainly in the last 10, we've been emphasizing that remote workers are happier. You don't have to pay them more for them to be happier. They increase the productivity. That increased productivity goes to the employer. Meanwhile, they're still able to deal with their family. They're still able to be happy, and people start to be treating like adults. Now, if you're a barista or you're a construction worker or you're a traffic policeman, that's not going to work for you. And those are the people that are out there doing their jobs and saving our lives right now. Not so much the barista, but you get it. But for the rest of us, there's no reason to come somewhere. And like we said earlier in the call, you can now recruit from anywhere in the world. You no longer have to have that. And that means I can live anywhere in the world. I'm coming to you from New Jersey, but I could be wherever the schools are better if that's more important to me, or wherever life is more hustle and bustle, or life is calmer, or I have access to airports, or whatever my criteria is. It doesn't have to be near work. And you're right. We have now advanced the clock at least 10, if not 15 years ahead. So I think these are all some really terrific topics. I appreciate all of you guys for joining me to talk about them. Why don't I go around the room one more time and ask everybody how people can reach out to them if they want to get more information. Blair, you're the top of my list again. Why don't you tell everybody how they can reach out to you if people want to talk to you?
Sure. My email is bpleasant@comfusion.com. And on Twitter, Blair Plez, so BLAIRPLEZ.
Terrific. David?
You could find me at letsdovideo.com or follow me on Twitter at letsdovideo.
Thank you very much, David. Roopam?
You can reach me via Twitter at Roopam Jain, or email is rjain@frost.com.
And finally, Tim?
Sure, thank you, David. So you can reach me on Twitter, Banting.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much. Look, I am going to do this again. I'm a little scared to think that I'm going to do this again in 45 days, that the situation won't have changed, but we're going to keep putting content out there. The one thing that I don't want to do, we at the IMCCA and a lot of our associated companies and organizations and analyst firms have been trying to put a lot of information out there that's useful. We're now starting to see a bit of a noise floor take place in the industry. So I'm not going to do a webcast every 2 days when there are 5 webcasts going on every day and you can't tell which one is educational versus a sales pitch versus, worthwhile content versus not worthwhile content. But whenever we can come out and talk about something that is useful that no one else is talking about, we're going to be out there with it and try and help everybody. So for the IMCCA, for all the organizations I work with, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to you joining us the next time. Take care.